Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. How are you doing? I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So we're moving on in the journey of studying life through the example of Arjuna, where Krishna is teaching Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna to help him in the situation in life that he is in right now. And we've been learning yesterday and the day before about Dhira. What is Dhira? This personality. Prabhupada gave the beautiful definition that Dhira means one who's understood the soul, he understood the super soul, and he understood nature, and he understood matter and spirit. So the combination of all of that is a progression from lamentation to wisdom to now Dhira. So Krishna is going to expound this further, and he's just touched on the bodily level of the Dhira. And he's explained how that this Dhira is one who's observing that the body is constantly changing, but you was not aware of it. You only became aware when the body stopped changing. So therefore it created lamentation. So the mindset that you were taught about life does not correspond with life itself. So you were not taught properly how to understand life and the process of life. So in today, Krishna is going to take that example further with explaining the body and also helping us to understand what motivates a Dhira. The person who's Dhira, Dehino. Yesterday we were hearing, Dehino sminyata dehe. That in the Dehe, the body, there is the Dehino, the person. And what is he? Dhiras tatrana moyate. He is equipoised. He is completely balanced about life. So how did he achieve that state of consciousness, that state of being balanced and equipoised? So Krishna is going to address that in today's verse. So Bhagavad Gita 2.14. Matra sparsa tu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkada Agamapayano nityas tamstatik svabharataha. Translation: O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress. So Krishna is addressing Arjuna's unbalanced emotions at the moment. And he's saying to him, Arjuna, do you know why you're experiencing this right now? Because you haven't assessed two powerful processes of the mind, of your emotions. And what is that? Suffering and happiness. These are two powerful processes that motivate us and inspire us to continue on with life. But the problem is you are only attached to the happiness part of it. And by the training of our culture right now, the modern culture, the culture that we live in, it's completely designed only for happiness. It never addresses the part of life when suffering occurs. So if you're only driving on one wheel, that is called a unicycle. And how many of us can drive life using a unicycle? Even with four wheels, we're having problem. And we even have a spare wheel in the boot, but still 5 wheels don't help. So we see Krishna is telling Arjun, you haven't addressed life as a process. You got to see the happiness and the distress. You got to see that life is duality. Everything here acts in dual function. So when you're experiencing happiness, be ready to also have an equivalent amount of suffering also. It's built in. The advertising of the world only tells you that the person is driving a very nice sports car, he's got the pretty girl, he's got the house, he's got everything. You're not seeing the other side of life. He has to pay insurance, he has to worry about who's going to steal his car, whether the girl is only coming for the car or she actually likes him. All these things he has to worry about. But when you see him driving past, you only see the happiness side. You never see the other side. And even when we look at our own bodies, and this is important because even when we look at our own bodies, how much of your own body have you understood? Because by your eyes, you only see the front part of your body. That's only 50% from your shoulders right down to your toes. That's only half your body. The other half is behind you. The back shoulders, your back, the back of your legs, right down to your heels. You're never able to see that. We only see that by reflection through a mirror or something. But directly, you only see life through this is what you see. So you only actually experiencing the posterior part of your body, the front of your body. So how do you say you know yourself? You're only experiencing 50% of the body in reality. That's all. And even of that, we're not even conscious of it when it's changing every moment. Krishna was telling Arjuna this yesterday. You're lamenting for that which is not worthy of grief. You're causing grief to yourself because you don't have enough knowledge. And to add to that, you've also adapted this lamentation process of life through all aspects of life. You're not only lamenting death, you're actually also lamenting all parts of life. So anytime you have a problem, you've learned to lament and you've trained your mind this way. Why have you trained your mind this way, Arjun? Because the world is doing the same thing and you think it's right. Therefore, we need wisdom. Therefore, you have to be Dhira. You have to be that person who assesses life from the soul, from the super soul, from nature, from spirit and matter. This is Dhira. This is the person who's empowered, because composure is power. When you composed in life, when you equipoised, when you composed, despite whatever life is throwing you, you can only be that. That is Dhira. You can only be that if you're connected on a higher dimension. Because on the same dimension, you're going to react like everybody else. But response means thought has went into it, and you can only do that from wisdom, from the higher dimension. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you're Dhira, Arjuna. You have the potential to be Dhira. Why are you just reacting like this and lamenting like a little girl here? You big warrior, big soldier, you're crying like a little girl here. So let's see what he says here. So he addresses Arjuna like this because he's asking him, where are you taking shelter? You remember the first day we discussed this on the first class we did. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakriti ashrita. That those who are Mahatmas, the great souls, why are they great? Because they have wisdom. And what do? Daivim prakriti ashrita. They take shelter of the divine energy. They don't take shelter of the external energy, the prakriti. So he's asking Arjuna, where are you taking shelter, Arjuna? And he's asking Arjuna, you have to come to terms with addressing your emotions. Emotions is the thing that runs the sweetness of life. If you want to experience life, you're going to have to understand your emotions and address them. And why are you in this situation? Because you have false expectations. You have false expectations of what is life. Why is that? Because that's what you've been taught by the modern culture. So life has taught you that it's all happy. If you work hard enough, you'll get it. It's never showing you that you have to be balanced, that you also have to train yourself, train your mind to be composed, equipoised about the suffering. It never tells you that. So Bhagavad Gita is the manual for life, because it's teaching us the reality of life right out there where it matters, where it's practically applied. So we see Krishna's teaching technique here, that he's clarifying Arjuna's expectations, that adjust your expectations realistically. And he's doing that by removing the ignorance from Arjuna's eyes. Remember, this is the Guru. Om Ajnana Timirandasya. Guru removes your ignorance so you can see it for what it is. So Krishna is doing this by making Arjuna aware of that which is impermanent. Understand what is permanence, and on what nature, on what platform do you get permanence. You want permanence, but you want it on the material platform. It can't support it. The material platform doesn't support permanence. It's constantly changing, and that example he showed with the body yesterday. So he says, how do you expect permanence when the body is constantly changing like this? Is that realistic? So he really addresses Arjuna by addressing this point of what is permanent and non-permanence, and on which platform they exist. You can't expect something from the spiritual platform like permanence to apply here to the material platform when it's not supported. The software is not supported. So Krishna is making Arjuna aware of this. And is making Arjuna aware that right now what you're describing, none of this is permanent. So why do you have this false expectation? It's because you haven't understood matter. You haven't studied matter properly enough. And he's given that example yesterday that the body is always changing. Death is not a problem. You haven't studied life. If you studied life, you'll realize that death is inevitable. But you haven't studied life. Therefore, when it happens, it shocks you. So look at the beautiful words Prabhupada used here. He says the appearance of happiness. He used the word appearance like it's an illusionary act. It just comes out of its own accord and it goes out of its own accord. It's a magical, illusionary thing. So if you're basing the substance of life on an illusionary thing, then whose fault is it? Look at the words, Prabhupada. Beautiful, isn't it? He says it's the appearance of happiness and distress. It appeared. Out of its own accord it came. So look at the beautiful word choices and the teaching technique of Krishna. He knows Arjuna is inquisitive. Arjuna is a Kshatriya. So he's hearing this and thinking, wow, if it just appeared like this, it's right. So is there a controller behind all of this? Who makes it appear and disappear? Who is behind the scenes there? So it's slowly bringing in concepts and thoughts about wisdom, about the dhira, that actually there is a superior level of control, which you're not thinking about right now, Arjuna. You're thinking this is just magical, that happiness just came like that this happiness thing just comes and goes like that. There is a controller behind it. And if there's a controller behind it, that means it's by a certain level of decision that controller is giving you the happiness and is giving you the suffering. So it's bringing up deeper and deeper thoughts about why then does the suffering happen? Why does the happiness happen? On what grounds does that controller decide whether I get happiness or distress? You see how profound this is? This is Bhagavad Gita, devotees. So the translation goes on. And their disappearance in due course. So he's telling Arjuna that it appears, but it also disappears. So it can't be from the spiritual platform, because one who's dhira, he observes from the spiritual platform. So something is appearing and disappearing, it's on the material platform. So now you want it to be permanent? You haven't understood how it's working. You want a permanent experience, but you haven't observed the platform that it's built on. It's built on the material platform. And we know nothing is permanent on that platform. So he's really removing the ignorance from Arjuna's eyes. See it, Arjuna. See it for what it is. Don't see it for more than it is. So this verse today, Krishna is really addressing Arjuna from inside and from outside. We see he addressed Arjuna from outside with the body. He only gave him the example of the body yesterday. Dehinosmin yata dehe. That within the dehe, the body, there is dehino, one who is living in the body, the person, and dhirastatra namoyate. He is equipoised. But Arjuna is intelligent and saying, well, the body is not working on its own. What is the software? What is the thing that's making him think and act that way? Today, now in today's verse, he's addressing that aspect. So we discussed the gross body, now he's discussing the subtle body, the mind and intelligence. And he's giving these examples how that dhira, how the person dhira is situated and motivated. So he's understood with yesterday's examples of the body. Now Krishna is describing further the subtle part, the mind and intelligence. So he describes here, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. So right now, we are in winter here in India and you guys are in summer there in South Africa. So we can see it's two extremes. I keep hearing it's so hot there. Yesterday I spoke to a devotee. First thing he said, Prabhu, 33 degrees today. I said, Prabhu, 3 degrees today here in India. So hot and cold. So hot and cold, so you experience that through the body. So he's saying first you got to understand externally, you're going to feel hot and cold. That means, so first you're going to have to understand externally that by nature, by the process of life, life is going to happen to you. Things are going to happen to you physically. You're going to feel hot and cold is also translated as you're going to feel disease. You're going to experience pain. You're going to get hurt. You may even lose a limb. You may have a bodily defect. There may be so many things wrong with the body that you're going to have to see, experience, assess, and deal with. So first is giving the example of the outside world, hot and cold. That if you're going to assess these two components of life, happiness and distress, first see it from the outside world. That it's going to happen to you by its appearance and disappearance. So you're not in control of it. It's a variable. So first it's going to happen from outside. Now let's see what Krishna says. They arise from sense perception. So having explained this, Krishna is saying it is coming from sense perception. It's coming from your perception through the senses, Arjun. And we know that that is imperfect. Okay, here's the first test for all the great, smart people out there. Okay, this is the first one. If you observe this video clip here, what do you see there the gentleman doing? I think everybody would say, without a doubt, immediately, he is washing a truck that is being parked off. Okay? So let's try to observe this. And as he's washing the truck, aha! And now, what has happened there? It was a truck. It looked like the guy was washing it. And by my direct sense perception or empirical study, I seem to have made a mistake there. I seem to have misinterpreted it. So the first one you got wrong. Now this happened to me actually. If I'm originally from India, and if this was India where a tractor was just parked in the middle of the road, out in the middle of nowhere, it wouldn't be a problem. It's okay. It happens in India. Wonderful India, they call it, right? It happens in India. It's no big deal. But I was in the middle of a suburb and I was observing, and all of a sudden this car came up, and he came out of the car, and you know about road rage, right? And I heard about this, but I'm not, I haven't seen it. And I said, oh my God, this guy stopped his car right in front of this tractor, and he's jumping out of the vehicle, and oh no, he's coming up to me. Oh no, now what am I going to tell him? And as he came up to me, he came right up to me, and then, aha! And we see with these examples, like we see here with the duck and the rabbit, if we look at it, is this picture a duck or a rabbit? Look closely. If you have to see carefully, you'll see it's actually both. So if we're using the senses, it's going to give us imperfect knowledge, because surely you know the difference between a duck and a rabbit, right? It's two different mammals. Now you're looking at this picture, your senses are showing you that it's one. So if you use this as a source of knowledge, it's imperfect. And if you use Vedas as a source of knowledge, that is a different dimension, because that's coming from the spiritual realm. Both is knowledge, one is perfect, one is imperfect.